Hello everyone, I'm Vanish Signal. Before we get into tonight's footage, hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. Story 1. Motion Trackers. The first motion ping came in at 2:41 a.m. A soft, barely noticeable chime on the dashboard of the security station at Stillwater Logistics, an overnight freight facility tucked into the edge of a forgotten industrial park. Nothing ever really happened there after midnight. Just long stretches of silence, the occasional shuffle of rodents, or the distant creak of cooling metal. Randy, the lone night shift monitor, had been halfway through his sandwich, eyes glazed over from hours of watching nothing, and barely registered the alert. Motion triggers were routine, usually just wind knocking something loose or a rat scurrying across a loading dock. But this one came from camera 12. Camera 12 was different. It faced the alley behind Warehouse B, a forgotten stretch of cracked asphalt, warped fencing, and rusted trash bins that hadn't been moved in months. The area had no foot traffic, no cargo deliveries, and no reason for motion. It was also the only camera in the system known to glitch, an odd infrared stutter that caused the footage to blink and shudder unpredictably, like the image itself was being pulled through static. Curious, Randy leaned forward, brushing sandwich crumbs off his shirt. The screen showed the usual empty alley, nothing out of place, but the motion icon kept pulsing in the corner, steady, insistent. He rolled back the footage. 3 seconds before the alert, empty. Then, a flicker. One frame blinked, then another. And in the middle of one frozen frame, something. It stood there, impossibly still. Tall, gaunt. Its edges shimmered like heat on pavement. The form not entirely solid, like a smear caught between dimensions. It faced the alley wall, not the camera. No face, no features, just presence. Then it blinked out. Gone. Randy stared, heart ticking faster. He replayed the sequence again and again. Empty. Glitch, presence, glitch, empty. He tapped the audio feed. Just the low hum of distant compressors and the occasional moan of the wind. Then a sharp pop, then faint feedback, like a microphone catching its own echo. He switched to the live view. The alley was still. Then camera 12 went dark. Not static, not scrambled, just clean black. He clicked to another channel. Camera 8-normal, camera 11-normal. But camera 12? Still nothing. No signal, no error code, just absence, as if the camera had been erased. Randy logged the issue. Hardware fault, to be checked by day crew, and reached to resume his shift routine. Before he could, the dashboard chimed again. Camera 9. This one inside Warehouse B. The interior corridor backing directly onto the alley behind camera 12. Randy froze. His hand hovered over the mouse. The motion icon pulsed, slow and steady. He opened the feed. The corridor was dim, lit only by overhead fluorescents that flickered slightly from age. For a few seconds, nothing moved. Then, in the lower corner of the screen, just barely visible, a sliver of shadow slipped across the far wall. Not a person, not an animal. It moved too smoothly, too deliberately, like something knowing it was just out of sight. He leaned in. His fingers found the intercom switch. "Dispatch," he whispered. "You need to send someone now." There was no response. Instead, the speaker crackled, and then Randy heard his own voice reply. "Already watching." A cold shiver ran through him. Then camera 9 went dark. For almost a full minute, Randy sat absolutely still in the security control chair, locked in a kind of stunned trance as he stared at the blacked-out feed from camera 9. A chill had crept into the air, subtle but unmistakable, and the hum of the outdated fluorescent lights above seemed louder now, like it was trying to drown out something quieter underneath. He tapped a few keys. The system didn't respond. Camera 9 stayed dead. So did camera 12. Every other feed was active, technically, but it all looked too staged, too synchronized, as if the system was pretending to function. Randy leaned closer to the monitors, his eyes darting across the walls of flickering frames. He was looking for anything, any motion, any flicker that didn't belong. Beneath the fluorescent buzz, a faint, eerie tone emerged. At first, he thought it was interference, but the longer he listened, the more it resembled something alive, like a voice trying to crawl its way up through static and wires. A high, whispering whine, electronic yet somehow organic. He cycled to camera 15. Loading dock, empty. Rows of pallets, silent forklifts, nothing unusual. He flipped again. Camera 7. Hallway outside the break room. Lights flickering, but nothing moving. Then he hovered over the icon for camera 10. The thumbnail preview stuttered. It didn't just flicker, it lurched. The image shifted forward in time, like a skipped heartbeat. A moment stolen. That kind of thing wasn't possible with static thumbnails. Randy clicked. Camera 10 loaded. Southern stairwell. No one there. But the image, it moved. Not the scene, but the frame itself. The perspective swayed slightly, like the camera was suspended from something breathing. His eyes dropped to the timestamp in the lower right corner. 004203, 004202, 0042001. It was counting backwards. He instinctively pulled his hands away from the console. That wasn't a playback. That was live feed behaving like a loop, but in reverse. He tapped a key. The frame froze. Then the stairwell lights blinked once. And in that stutter, something appeared. A figure. Not in the stairwell, not in the reflection of the lens, in the door's glass panel at the bottom of the screen. Someone, or something, was standing behind the camera's viewpoint, not facing it, but looking in the same direction, watching, like it had been standing there a long time. Randy panicked and slammed the keyboard. The feed glitched, reset, then snapped forward. The time resumed its forward count. The hallway returned to empty. But that sensation, that icy weight pressing down on the back of his neck, didn't fade. His phone buzzed, just once. No ringtone, no display, no screen light, just a vibration that started and didn't stop. He fumbled for it, pulled it from his pocket, screen off, still vibrating, relentless. He held the power button. Nothing. Then, without warning, the screen illuminated. It was showing a live camera feed. Stillwater Logistics, Warehouse B Camera 12. It had come back, but something was wrong. The timestamp was wrong. It wasn't showing now. It was showing 1 hour from now. Randy leaned in. The feed showed the same security room. His chair, empty. His coffee mug was tipped over, keyboard shattered, a dark streak smeared across the monitors. Too dark to be just coffee. He blinked hard, eyes stinging. Then the video feed jumped forward again, just half a second. In the frame, the security room door, his door, was swinging open. Behind him. And something on the other side was already reaching through. We expected it to be kids. Local teens breaking in for a dare or tagging the loading bays like they'd done last year. That's what we told ourselves as we geared up for a third night of stakeout inside Bay C. But by 2:07 a.m., the alarms didn't just chirp, they screamed. All 6 cameras went black at once. No fade out, no glitch, just a single frame of frozen footage, then solid gray. The motion sensors across the warehouse lit up like strobes. West aisle, South Dock, cold storage. Every one of them tripped at the same time. On the monitor, it looked like the building was full of people moving in perfect sync. Dozens of overlapping pings flickering in and out, too coordinated to be random, too fast to be human. We split into pairs. I took north with Hayes, cutting through the upper office mezzanine while the other team swept ground level. Radio chatter was tense. Low whispers, heavy breathing, nothing but motion detections and no visuals. The lights overhead flickered, emergency circuits only, all low power. But they cast just enough illumination for us to see the shadows moving where there shouldn't have been any. Hayes whispered that he thought he saw someone standing on top of the conveyor rig. Just standing, still as stone, head slightly tilted. We aimed our lights, but there was nothing. Just the faint echo of a footstep that didn't belong to either of us. Then the radios went silent. I tried to call out. Channel 3, then 4. No response. The only thing I heard was static, and under it, the soft repetition of something metallic, clicks like joints bending or cameras adjusting, something mechanical moving in slow, measured bursts. That's when we saw them. Not people, not exactly. Shadows shaped like us, sure, but off. Elongated limbs, faces blurred like footage scrubbed too many times. They walked just like we did, moved just like us. One mimicked Hayes perfectly. His gait, the slight limp in his left leg, even the nervous habit of adjusting his sleeve. But it wasn't him. It was wrong. A mirror, cracked just enough to unsettle. The motion sensors went dead all at once. Total silence. Then, a new sound. Metal scraping on concrete. We followed it, not out of bravery, but because it felt like the only option. Like something was pulling us in. It led us to camera 6, the one we thought had gone offline. But it was active, recording. Its lens focused on a wall that now had something written across it. You're being watched too? The camera panned slowly. No motor noise, no mechanical hum. It moved like it was alive. We backed out, didn't run, couldn't. It felt like if we moved too fast, it would trigger something worse. We kept our lights low, radios off, breath shallow. The building had changed. Corridors stretched too long. Familiar paths didn't connect anymore. It was like the layout had shifted, rearranged to keep us inside longer. We made it out by 3:22 a.m. The outside floodlights clicked on as we crossed the threshold, as if nothing had happened. But back in the security office, every monitor showed something else. Footage of us, inside, still walking the aisles. Except we were already out, and the versions inside were still moving. The footage from camera 12 didn't match what we saw in real time. At 3:41 a.m., all motion-activated lights on the east perimeter flared up. Every bulb caught something moving across the back service lane. We didn't see it ourselves. The monitors showed nothing. But the lights responded like they always do when someone walks through. 3 seconds after the lights went on, the camera registered movement. A flicker. Then the timestamp skipped backward by 8 seconds. When it resumed, the figure was in a different place, closer to the building, in a dead zone where our cameras overlap and the angles go blind for about 6 feet. Maintenance reviewed the playback frame by frame. The figure didn't walk. It didn't move naturally. It stuttered through the frames like a corrupted render, one shoulder higher than the other, spine bowed just enough to suggest it wasn't built right. Like it had studied walking but hadn't practiced enough. It paused right under the emergency floodlight. Not to avoid it, no. It stopped like it was waiting for something. When the bulb blew out, the figure moved again. One step, another. Then it dropped out of view like it had never been there to begin with. We dispatched a security sweep. Nothing. No prints, no heat trace. But when we checked the motion log, something else showed up. The interior sensors on level 3 had registered movement at the exact same second the floodlight failed. Except level 3 is sealed. Has been for 6 months. Renovation zone, asbestos flagged. So why were the motion trackers still live? And why did they register a shape too big for a person, but too narrow to be a machine? We reviewed backup footage. One hallway cam, camera 3L, captured 30 seconds of corrupted static. But within the distortion, Alvarez noticed something. Pattern pulses. 3 in sequence, then a pause, then 3 again. She ran it against old ID tag signals and got a partial match. The signal was from an old badge, one of ours. But the employee it belonged to? Retired? Deceased 5 years ago. When we pulled his archived footage from back then, a pattern started to emerge. Same route, same behavior. He'd walk the perimeter, stop at the east lane, step under the same light. Back then, he'd say he was just doing his rounds. But now, it looks like something's replaying those rounds. Only it's getting the details wrong, like it remembers how it looked, but not how it felt. We're locking down level 3 again. No more access, no more tests, no more assumptions. But deep in the motion log, at the very bottom of the list, someone, or something, tagged a manual note. It just said, replay syncing, adjusting memory, do not interfere. The alert triggered at 3:17 a.m. sharp. We were already jumpy. 2 nights of false motion pings, camera resets, and blinking red feeds that cut out the moment we tried to remote access. But this one was different. No flicker, no static, just a clean, sharp feed from camera 12, West Hallway Junction. A single figure, standing dead center in the corridor. Too still, no badge, no movement, just standing. I was on monitor rotation. I locked in the frame, zoomed closer. Whoever it was, they were facing the wrong way. Back turned to the camera. No uniform. Looked like hospital scrubs, stained or dirty. But the part that made my skin crawl, they were perfectly centered. The red emergency light above them blinked on a fixed interval, and they were positioned so precisely, the lights seemed to flare like a metronome right above their head, as if they'd placed themselves in the exact middle of the hallway. I called it in. Jenkins and Diaz responded on foot. Their radios crackled as they approached the corridor. Visual confirmation, figure in scrubs, not responding to verbal. Still no movement, standing completely still. Jenkins moved forward, weapon drawn. Diaz flanked. Their body cams were synced to the feed. I watched the figure grow larger on both monitors. Then something strange happened. The timestamp began to desync. Camera 12 said it was 3:19:04. Jenkins' feed said 3:17:11. Diaz's feed, 3:22:46. All 3 live, all 3 real time, none of them matching. Then the feeds glitched, not all at once, staggered, like dominoes falling in slow motion. Diaz's screen folded into static first, then Jenkins's. Only camera 12 remained. The figure had turned. It didn't happen naturally. One frame, it was facing away. The next, it was facing the lens, without motion blur. Like the system had skipped the act of turning. Their face was visible now, unsmiling, tilted slightly, eyes wide and reflective like they were lit from inside. They blinked twice, then stepped forward. We called for fallback. By the time backup arrived, both officers were gone. No struggle, no sound. Their radios were still transmitting, locked open but silent. When we pulled the footage later, the hallway was empty the entire time. No figure, no Jenkins, no Diaz. But their flashlights were found left behind. Camera 12 had auto-deleted its last 2 hours. We traced every motion ping in the building's history, every alert, every false positive. It formed a pattern, a path, always toward the center of the structure. I visited the site myself the next night, took a handheld battery-powered analog camera, no network, no smart tech, just a basic feed on tape. At 3:17 a.m., the hallway lights flickered. My motion tracker beeped once. Someone stepped into frame. Not me, not anyone else on staff. They raised a hand, slowly, and pointed directly at the lens. And behind me, through my earpiece, I heard my own voice say, "You're watching too late." I turned. Nothing. When I played the tape back later, frame by frame, there was a single image spliced at the midpoint. Not of the hallway, not of the figure, just a close-up of my own face, sleeping. I haven't been back since, and I won't be. Whatever is tracking motion in that facility, it's not watching us. It's rehearsing us. End of story. Story 2. Lot 28 monitor part. The storage yard behind Building K is rarely checked. Most staff don't even remember it exists. Officially, it's a retired equipment depot, fenced in with chain link and topped with rusted razor wire. The only reason we noticed it was still active was the camera. One of our new hires in security was reviewing archived surveillance footage for a training module when he flagged an anomaly. A feed labeled Lot 28 Monitor had recent timestamps, active logs stretching back weeks. That wouldn't be strange, except Lot 28 was decommissioned in 2009. I pulled the files myself. The footage is grainy and black and white, recorded on a camera that looks older than most of our systems. Still, it works. Each night at 2:03 a.m., the frame jitters. The angle doesn't change, but the image subtly shifts, like someone bumped the pole. Then, for approximately 26 seconds, a figure appears at the edge of the frame. It's always the same. Tall, male, wearing a coat that drapes unevenly like it's waterlogged. His face is indistinct, but not blurry, just lacking definition, as if rendered from memory instead of captured by a lens. He doesn't move much. He stands in the same spot each night, hands at his sides, staring past the camera. What's worse is how he disappears. He doesn't walk away. He doesn't turn. The camera jitters again, and he's gone. But when you freeze the footage on the frame just before he vanishes, there's a glitch, a blur that extends horizontally like the image is being dragged sideways. Behind it, barely visible, is something else. Another figure, shorter, standing further back, just for a single frame. We check the yard. It's locked from the outside, sealed with an old bolt chain. No signs of recent entry. The grass has grown wild between the cracks in the pavement. The only thing in the entire lot is a single plastic chair placed dead center and the camera pole. Nothing else. The timestamp always reads 2:03 a.m. down to the second. I've queued the footage for deeper analysis, but something's not right. When I copied the video files to a local drive for review, the copies recorded new timestamps, 2:03 a.m. on the current day. Every day, even when the file wasn't opened, like it was updating itself. I'm scheduling a visit to the lot tomorrow, just before sunset. No one wants to come with me. One of the night shift guys asked if we could move the camera. I told him it's analog. It shouldn't be recording at all. He just nodded and walked away. Then came back an hour later and asked if I'd watched last night's tape yet. I hadn't told him I'd started reviewing them. He said, "You'll know when you do." That was 12 hours ago. I haven't watched the latest file yet. It's exactly 26 seconds long. Timestamp 2:03 a.m. Today, we didn't catch the change in the footage right away. At first glance, Lot 28 looked exactly the same. Rows of vacant parking spots, a sagging chain-link fence, the distant flicker of tired sodium vapor lights, casting their usual amber haze. But something was off. Patel flagged it during a routine review of the overnight camera footage. At exactly 3:42 a.m., camera 4 cut to static for just 3 seconds. When the feed resumed, a van had appeared in slot B12, aged, dented, white and coated in a thick film of dust, like it had been abandoned for weeks. But here's the thing. No vehicle had driven in or out. The gate cams were clean. Motion sensors hadn't been triggered. No wheels touched the pavement. The van simply materialized. Patel figured it had to be a glitch, maybe an artifact from delayed or misaligned footage. She scrubbed the previous 48 hours of recordings. Not a single frame showed that van. Slot B12 had remained empty for years. We verified it against old maintenance logs. The space had been marked unused since late 2021. We pulled up the live feed. The van was still there, motionless, in perfect alignment with the space's faded lines. It had no tags, no visible branding. The windows weren't tinted. They were pitch black, like slabs of obsidian. No reflections, no glare. I zoomed in. The paint was streaked, long, arcing smears like someone had dragged damp fingers through the dust. But the streaks didn't drip downward. They started halfway up the door. We dispatched Barker to do a sweep. Standard operating procedure. He was in uniform, vest on, comms active, synced to the feed. We tracked his approach on camera 04. His flashlight beam wobbled slightly across the asphalt. He paused at the edge of the van's blind spot, right at the corner where the camera's reach failed. Then he stepped out of frame. We radioed him. Nothing. No reply. Camera 04 jittered. For exactly 0.4 seconds, the footage slipped. One frame forward, then back like a hiccup. When it stabilized, the van door was wide open. Barker wasn't there. I jumped to cam 05. Nothing but quiet. Switched to cam 06. In the upper corner, just barely, there was motion. The top of a head, not Barker's. The hair was too long, too dark, moving too slowly. The figure ducked behind the dumpster row at the south end of the lot. Then gone. Dispatch tried again. No contact. We launched Drone Unit 2 for aerial support. As it calibrated, the radio flared, static at first, then Barker's voice. But it didn't sound right. It was sluggish, distant, like someone impersonating him after a long stretch of sleepless nights. "Still here," he said. I responded. "Confirm your ID code." Silence. Then, "It's not closed yet." The van doors slammed. All cameras watching Lot 28, cams 03 through 06, cut to static. Every feed dropped. The whole system rebooted. 2 minutes later, when we brought the network back online, the van was gone. So was Barker. No exit alerts, no vehicle logs, no footprints. Slot B12 sat empty, like it always had. That's when Patel noticed something deeper. The cam logs between 3:42 and 3:57 showed 3 overlapping time signatures. Not just dropped frames or corrupted footage. 3 full distinct recordings of the same 15-minute window. One showed the van, one showed Barker, and the third showed nothing. Just a perfectly normal, uneventful loop of Lot 28. Quiet, still, uninterrupted. Like the system had rewritten reality. And the worst part wasn't that one of the timelines had been erased. It was that we didn't know which one we were in now, or if we were the ones being watched and overwritten next. The third night, the system didn't just record, it responded. At exactly 2:11 a.m., the feed from camera 06 glitched, not with static, but with something like signal interference, low pulses that rolled through the frame like breathing. Then the timestamp froze. Not the footage, just the numbers in the corner. They stayed locked at 2:11:36 while the footage continued playing normally. I only noticed because the figure that had been standing still, visible just for a second each night, began to move. It stepped left, then right, then disappeared behind the maintenance trailer. This wasn't a freeze frame or playback. It was movement synced across 3 camera angles. Footsteps, slightly staggered, showed up in the gravel behind the trailer. But there was no one visibly making them. No shadow, no silhouette, just crushed rock that shifted under weight. Whatever it was, it had weight. Massachusetts presence. I flagged the clip, sent it to facilities. They didn't respond. I tried calling the night supervisor. Line rang twice, then clicked, followed by silence and a single line of distorted audio. Already seen, already sent. At 3:08 a.m., I returned to the footage. Camera 02, which faced the lot entrance, was showing a live feed of the guard station, except the chair inside wasn't empty anymore. Someone was sitting in it, motionless, facing the camera directly. We don't have overnight guards at Lot 28. I tried switching angles, but the UI froze. Every camera, 01 through 08, was now fixed on that same station. 8 identical feeds, same perspective, same still figure. But when I looked closely, I noticed something worse. Each feed was off by a second. Each showed the same moment, staggered like a slow-motion echo, and in each one, the figure in the chair moved slightly. A finger tap, a blink, a tilt of the head. But none of these movements synced across the feeds. They were all different, like each one was its own version of the same moment, being acted out slightly differently. Just enough to make you feel like you were watching 8 timelines argue with each other. And then, the figure stood up, only in the final feed. Camera 8. The movement was fluid, direct, with an unnatural kind of smoothness, like it was being puppeted. It walked out of frame, but didn't reappear in any of the others. Just gone. A minute later, the other feeds returned to normal. The timestamp began ticking again. Everything looked clean, as if nothing had happened. But the security log updated itself at 3:12 a.m. It listed a new file, one I didn't name. Lot 28 archive/authorized mirror inside was a 10-second clip. No video, just audio. My voice. Monitoring complete. Transference initiated. I never said those words, and the file was created while I was still staring at the monitors. I shut everything down, disconnected the system physically, but the fans in the server rack kept spinning. One by one, each monitor flicked back on. No signal, just blank gray, like the system was waiting for a new feed to begin. I left the room, turned off the lights, locked the door. But when I passed the external monitor mounted above the hallway exit, it flickered to life and showed a live view of me, standing still in the control room I'd just left. Only, I wasn't moving. And the timestamp was frozen at 2:11:36. The camera angle facing the north side of Lot 28 had always been static. Nothing but an aging fence, a line of pine trees, and a strip of cracked pavement. But on Tuesday, at 3:42 a.m., that feed started glitching. Not cutting out, not losing signal, glitching. Like it was trying to show something that wasn't supposed to be seen. At first, it was the trees. They swayed out of sync with the wind. Everything else in the footage remained still. The litter on the ground, the chain on the gate, the flagged caution tape. but the trees danced like they were reacting to something deeper. Underground, maybe, or internal. When Reyes noticed the anomaly, she marked the footage for review. By the time I got to it, the movement had stopped. But she swore she saw something else. A shadow, not cast by light, but moving under the trees, crawling across them like something was walking upside down across the canopy. I isolated the frame. Frame 1123. What looked like static at first had a structure, an outline. Angular limbs, a suggestion of something upright, but thin, disproportionate, and worst of all, facing the camera, like it knew we were watching. The next night, the shadow returned. This time, it moved differently, no longer crawling, standing now just at the edge of the camera's range. The trees didn't sway. The wind was dead, but the shape leaned slightly to one side, then the other, as if mimicking the pan of a camera that never moved. Reyes enhanced the contrast. Under the blur, she found a face, or something like one. Not detailed, but arranged. Too hollow, a split where the mouth would be, but no depth. Flat, printed on the front like a sticker. It only stayed for 6 seconds. The next shift, I checked the logs. Someone had manually altered the timestamp, rolled it back by 12 minutes. No login, no ID tag, just overwritten data. And when we scrubbed the footage again, the shape was gone. Completely gone. As if it had been removed, frame by frame. Except the shadows on the trees were still there. Still twitching, even though there was nothing left casting them. The feed hasn't glitched since. But now, every night at 3:42 a.m., the motion sensor in camera 5 pings an alert. No visual change, no movement, just a trigger. Like something invisible walks through that spot at exactly the same time. Every time. Reyes won't review it anymore. She says it's not a glitch. She says the camera is remembering, and it's waiting to record the rest. The footage from Sunday night didn't corrupt. It didn't glitch. It just didn't stop. At 2:13 a.m., every camera in Lot 28 switched simultaneously to the same angle. Cam 04, the northeast corner, facing the loading dock. Even the ones that weren't physically capable of showing that spot. And then it played over and over. A figure walking toward the dock, slowly, then standing still, staring directly into the lens. It stood there for 37 minutes. The same 37 minutes from every camera, at every angle. The face wasn't visible. The body was indistinct. It wasn't pixelation, it was absence. Like something deliberately left out. Security tried to isolate a frame for enhancement, but every attempt dropped resolution by exactly 40%. Not 39, not 41, exactly 40. No matter what tool they used, as if something was enforcing it. Dispatch called it a software bug. We knew better. When Mallory returned on Monday, she didn't go to her desk. She went straight to the monitor room, said she needed to check something. 10 minutes later, she called me. Her voice was shaking. Cam 04, she said. It's not footage anymore, it's real time. I logged in remotely. Cam 04 was active, but the timestamp read tomorrow's date. The same static corner, the same loading dock. But now there were two figures. One just outside the dock, the other directly behind it, crouched, watching. I blinked, and the second figure was gone. Mallory didn't show up to her next shift. Her keycard pinged the exit at 2:37 a.m., but there was no visual record of her leaving. She never made it home. The next night, Cam 04 showed three figures. They didn't move. They didn't change position. But I swear they got closer. Each one more defined than the last. The closest one had my posture, my boots, my gait. I tried disabling the feed, unplugged the router, scrambled the IP. Nothing stopped it. The footage kept streaming, as if the signal came from inside the building itself. Then, early this morning, I woke up to my security monitor glowing. A notification flashing. Viewer confirmed, camera active. I clicked. Cam 04 filled the screen. 4 figures now, 1 near the lens. It was me. The mouth moved, but the sound didn't come from the speakers. It came from behind me. I turned. The screen went black. Lot 28 has been sealed. Cameras removed. Power disconnected. But Cam 04 still pings the network every night. Same time, same transmission. Always 4 figures now, always watching. One of them always wearing my uniform. End of story. Story 3. Warehouse 19. Feed. The first anomaly was easy to miss. It was flagged as a simple timestamp discrepancy. Footage 12B, motion trigger at 03:41:06. But the motion didn't line up. The sensors picked up movement, yet the camera remained still. No frame shift, no blur, no pixel change. Just nothing. The overnight shift supervisor, a guy named Ellis, reviewed it twice before logging it as a false alarm. At 3:52:09, it happened again. This time, the camera blinked. That's the only way to describe it. One frame was clean, the empty receiving bay, shutter door down, lights steady. And the next showed a person standing directly beneath the emergency exit sign. They weren't there a second before. They didn't enter through any known door. Just appeared, still, blurred at the edges. The next frame, they were gone. Ellis froze the footage and zoomed in. The figure was facing the camera directly. Male, mid-30s, gray coveralls, no visible ID badge. His face was partially obscured by artifacting, but one detail stood out. Both eyes were pitch black, not shadowed, not hidden by compression, just void, pure absence. He didn't call it in, he didn't mention it in the morning logs. Just saved a copy of the clip to a hidden folder and clocked out at 6 a.m. That was the last shift he ever worked. I found the clip 4 days later during a storage audit. Our system was logging minor inconsistencies in the camera logs, frame drops, compression hiccups, and corrupted metadata. Only on the feeds tied to Warehouse 19. All of it starting from that night. When I pulled Ellis's camera logs, the clip was the first file to load. No label, no timestamp, just a flickering loop. The figure blinking in and out like a stutter in reality. I traced the camera back through the network. All logs ended at 3:52:14. That's when the feed froze. It's still frozen now. 19 cameras in that building, and every one of them cut out within the same 5 seconds. No reboot, no reconnect. Every other building on the site is clean. Only Warehouse 19 is dead. I submitted a maintenance request. The ticket came back closed, marked complete with no technician assigned. When I followed up with site ops, they told me Warehouse 19 was officially decommissioned. That's news to everyone still working here. No one told the floor staff. No one cleared out the product. No one changed the delivery schedule. Every morning, the same shipments are logged in and moved through the same corridors. And yet, the warehouse doesn't exist on the current site map. No blueprints, no employee records, nothing. I showed the footage to my supervisor. She told me to delete it, told me not to bring it up again. That was yesterday. This morning, I came in to find my workstation already logged in. All of my audit reports had been wiped, except one. A single clip remained, queued on repeat. Same figure, same frozen frame. Except now, he was closer to the camera, and he was smiling. By the time we managed to pull the footage off the external drive, Warehouse 19 was already in full lockdown. This wasn't your average security sweep. It was locked down under a level 3 biohazard perimeter. Entire sections of the compound were taped off, access codes reset, even internal cameras disabled remotely. A bold red "Do Not Enter" placard was bolted to the main entrance, signed by someone from an oversight office I'd never even heard of, 3 levels above anyone I'd ever worked with. That kind of clearance is normally reserved for chemical leaks, rogue AI, or the stuff people pretend isn't real. It might have made sense if the footage showed anything biological. But it didn't, and that made it worse. The footage made less sense the longer we studied it. They started with the feed from camera 4. Timestamp 2:13:6, standard rotation. The warehouse floor was still. Lights cast steady beams across pallets and shelving racks. Then, at exactly 2:13 a.m., a pallet in the northeast quadrant shifted. Not rolled or dragged, shifted. The motion was tight and deliberate. 1 inch to the right, then back. Like something beneath the floor flexed. The movement was smooth, no jitter, no recoil. It looked like the floor itself breathed and then exhaled. 2 seconds later, camera 7 caught a separate anomaly. A stack of sealed crates, industrial supply cases with zip locks requiring manual override, lifted straight into the air. 3 inches, hovered, held for exactly 1 full second, then lowered. No tremor in the footage, no vibration on the equipment logs. The air inside the warehouse remained completely still, temperature unchanged. The cases moved as if held by unseen hands, manipulated with mechanical precision. We suspected a glitch, interference, so we ran diagnostics on every feed. Nothing. Clock synchronization perfect across the board. Internal drives intact. No loops, no skipped frames. The footage was real. Then Myers decided to review camera 1. The front loading dock. Normally a dead angle, nothing but empty pavement and a corroded loading sensor that hadn't tripped in years. At exactly 2:13:12, that sensor tripped. It activated, but the door itself didn't move. Instead, the edge of the camera frame picked up something new, a blur. Not a person, not a vehicle. A vertical ripple of static, a smear that swallowed the screen's edge like it was trying to bleed into the feed. No other footage was affected. The blur was contained to 1 camera, but it cast a shadow, a faint distortion over the loading bay's floodlight, like something stood there that wasn't supposed to, pressing against the visible world from the wrong side. Then came the audio. Not from the camera mic, from the warehouse's speaker system, which, according to facilities, had been physically disconnected months ago. And yet, it crackled to life. Harsh at first, then clear. A male voice, emotionless, flattened, sampled like something created from spliced-together dialogue clips. 5 words: reset complete, next phase queued, then dead air. Right as the voice ended, camera 4 cut to black. Not a power loss, a collapse. The video didn't fade out. It imploded, the last frame compressed into a thin strip, pixelated to the center, then blinked off. The feed has never returned. Every attempt to restore it crashes the system. Myers contacted facilities immediately. They claimed no operations were scheduled. IT insisted the speaker grid was still hardwired offline. Nobody had credentials active during that time. No badge access, no motion logs. We attempted to purge the footage, every copy, each backup. But no matter how many times we deleted the files, they reappeared, always under a new file name. Return 001, then Return 002. The pattern continued, each clip identical, but 1 second shorter than the last. Every single one cut off just before the voice. Now, the feed starts on its own. every night, exactly 2:13 a.m. And the last 3 nights? It hasn't started on camera 4. It starts on us, watching the monitor from the inside. The timestamp read 3:42:10 when the third anomaly occurred. Morales had already reviewed the footage 5 times by then, trying to convince himself that what they'd seen earlier was just a glitch. Maybe some static interference bleeding into the late shift, the usual ghosting from outdated camera hardware. But this wasn't that. Not even close. On camera 12, facing the back corridor by loading bay C, something blinked into view for exactly 2.3 seconds. It wasn't a flicker from motion sensors. It wasn't dust or lens flare. It was a figure. Still, upright, too tall to be human, too fluid in form to be made of anything mechanical. There were no facial features, no fabric folds, no identifying markers. Just the shape of something vaguely humanoid, standing just barely within the edge of the frame. It looked backlit, but there was no light source behind it. It cast no lens flare, no glow, just presence. By the time Morales froze the playback, the figure was gone. He scrubbed backward, frame by frame. Nothing walked in. Nothing walked out. The shape simply appeared, occupying a few frozen frames before vanishing without motion blur or transition, like a page torn out of the footage itself. Morales called Alvarez over. She leaned in, narrowing her eyes at the paused screen. For a while, she didn't say a word. Then she pointed. Look at the shadows. There were 2, one faint and expected from the overhead corridor lights, and a second, sharper, thicker, cast in a direction that defied the room's known light sources. It didn't belong. They flagged the anomaly as a visual distortion and moved on, logging it with central dispatch. But they didn't stop watching. 10 minutes later, camera 07, pointed at the mezzanine, picked up faint movement in the cage storage area. That zone had been sealed since the inventory freeze nearly a month ago. At first, it looked like lens refocus, a blur. But then the cage doors, secured with a padlock and marked off limits, began to sway open. Not slammed, not forced, not broken. They opened precisely 3 inches, paused, then slowly swung back without ever fully closing. No wind, no vibration, nothing on the motion sensors, just movement. Over the following 20 minutes, 7 more cameras recorded similar blips, static bursts, digital noise, and in each, the same shape. Just out of focus, just long enough to register. Tall, smooth, slight tilt of the head, like it was paying close attention to something unseen. The kind of posture that suggests listening, not casually, but intently, as if waiting for the next command. At 4:13 on the dot, every feed in the facility went dark. All at once. For exactly 1 second. No system errors, no reboot messages, just black. And then, as quickly as it had gone, the footage came back online. The figure was gone. But the storage cage wasn't the same. 3 pallets, previously recorded inside, were now missing. Each had been tagged with red warning stickers that read, "Do not process." Alvarez ran a full check. No keycard access had been logged. No door alarms. No motion tripped. Nothing except the missing items and a few corrupted audio files. They ran those files through recovery software. Most of it was incomprehensible noise, but beneath the hiss, under the degradation, a few distinct sounds emerged. A scraping, like something being dragged slowly across concrete, steady, measured, then breathing. Not human, too deep, too mechanical. And finally, just before the track cut out completely, a voice. Cold, too fast, and almost eager. Still watching. We accessed the backup footage from feed 19B, recorded 3 nights ago, the same night the alarms first triggered without any corresponding movement on the floor. At exactly 2:41 a.m., a pallet jack on the far end of the warehouse slid 6 feet across the concrete floor. No one was near it. The motion detection system didn't register a thing. The footage itself stuttered, lagging by half a second just as the jack moved, creating a strange warping effect where the video smeared sideways, like something unseen had dragged time with it instead of space. 3 minutes later, Rack D12 collapsed. Not the whole unit, just the top shelf, which buckled and crumpled downward like something impossibly heavy had landed on it for a split second. But there was no debris on the floor, no damage to the cardboard boxes, no trace of impact. Just twisted, mangled metal supports that looked as though they'd endured years of stress in a moment. We checked the structural logs. No anomalies, no seismic activity, no mechanical failure. It was like the metal decided to fail without cause, as if responding to an unseen pressure that left no mark. By the 5th timestamp anomaly, we noticed something else. A figure caught at the very edge of frame 19B. Not in motion, not blurry, just standing completely still. Between the racks, head tilted toward the camera. The timestamp glitched precisely when it appeared. The figure wore the same reflective vest as our night team, but didn't match any employee on the roster. No ID badge, no name patch. Zooming in revealed something even more unsettling. A blurred distortion where the face should have been, as if the compression algorithm had erased it, or like the footage itself had refused to record its features. Security was adamant. No one was in the building that night. Every door was sealed from the inside, every access point logged and verified. But from 2:41 to 2:59 a.m., that figure appeared on 9 separate camera angles, always at the periphery, always facing the lens, never moving, never walking, just repositioning between angles, like it was skipping across feeds instead of walking through the building. Then, at exactly 3 a.m., every camera feed went black. 13 full seconds. No audio, no static, just complete and unnatural silence. When the footage resumed, the racks were back in place. The pallet jack was exactly where it had started. The collapsed shelf was whole. No glitches, no warping, as if none of it had ever happened. But the timestamp now read 2:14 a.m. The footage had reversed itself. And when we pulled the backup copies, none of them matched each other. Each showed slightly different events. Some included new shadows creeping between racks, others were missing whole segments. One showed the figure turning its head. Another had a reflection in a polished floor tile that didn't match any known angle. But one tape was different. It was labeled Feed 19X. We never assigned that number. It wasn't in our system. That feed didn't show the warehouse. It showed a close-up of a security camera, looking directly at us. And behind it, just for a second. We saw ourselves, seated in the monitoring room, watching the screen. But we weren't moving. We were frozen, like the footage had started watching us back. We reviewed the final feed 6 times before we realized what we were seeing. Not just motion, not just figures, but a pattern. Every 3 minutes and 12 seconds, a shape would emerge in the northwest corner of the frame. Not fully visible. Just a shadow, stretching slightly, folding back into the dark like it was testing the boundary of the lens. It never crossed the motion sensor line, but it was moving closer each time. Exactly 1 tile closer, like it was measuring. That night, I stayed in the security booth alone. I pulled all cameras into a looped split screen, every angle inside Warehouse 19. The temperature dropped fast, but the internal sensors didn't report it. My breath misted against the glass. At 2:13 a.m., all feeds glitched, just for one frame. One. And when they returned, the shadow was gone. But the light above loading bay 4 flickered, a camera that hadn't triggered all night. When I zoomed in, the door was open, just slightly. I radioed for backup. No answer. Not static, just a flat hum, like the frequency had been hijacked. I pulled my jacket and headed inside, keeping the main floor lights off, only the glow of the monitors behind me, casting a faint blue over the concrete. Warehouse 19 is 48,000 square feet, most of it empty, but the further you move past the front loading docks, the more you find relics. Covered pallets, old switch panels, crates with no markings. Things we never cataloged. Things that had been there before we started. I reached Bay 4. The door was open 6 inches. It shouldn't have been able to open at all without a physical badge swipe and a mechanical release. I pressed my hand against the door and felt warmth. On metal, at 2:21 a.m., on a concrete dock in the dead of winter. I pushed inside. The door creaked like it was fighting to stay closed. My flashlight barely worked. The beam flickered like it was being pulled toward the floor. I moved slow. That's when I saw it. Every monitor in the building, every camera, was now pointed inward. Not just toward me, but through me. They weren't tracking motion. They were tracking position, recreating angles. Like the system was building a map of where I'd been. The monitors weren't displaying live footage. They were showing me 10 seconds ago, then 9, then 8. It was counting down. I turned to leave and found the door sealed. No wind, no slam, just gone. Welded shut like it had never opened. Behind me, the air changed. Heavy, saturated with static I could feel in my teeth. Cameras turned off one by one, and in the final screen, before the last feed cut to black, I saw the shape again. But this time, it wasn't shadow. It had eyes. The screen froze. A final message displayed in red. Position acquired. They found me at dawn, curled behind Bay 4, eyes wide open, body cold but pulse steady. I don't remember getting there. I don't remember anything after the countdown. But ever since, the cameras don't behave the same. They move a second before I do. They lock on before I enter the frame. They know where I'm going. And on quiet nights, Warehouse 19 still flickers to life at 2:13 a.m., whether it's occupied or not. The system doesn't need a watcher anymore. It became one.